There is a version of your life that is running right now without your permission. Not the life you think about when you imagine what you want. Not the life you describe when someone asks what you are working toward. The other one, the one that is actually happening. The one built not from your decisions but from your defaults. Not from your choices but from your habits. Not from what you have decided to do, but from what you have simply gotten used to doing. This version of your life runs on autopilot. And if you are honest with yourself, genuinely uncomfortably honest, you will recognize that this autopilot version accounts for most of your waking hours. The alarm, the phone, the coffee, the commute, the meetings, the lunch, the scrolling, the evening, the sleep, the alarm again. None of it decided, all of it automatic. I want to talk to you today about autopilot. About what it is, how it works, what it costs you, and most importantly, what it takes to switch it off. Because the man who is living on autopilot is not living his life. He is being lived by it. And there is no principle I know of, no law, no practice, no discipline that produces anything of lasting value in the life of a man who has handed the controls to his past. Let me tell you what autopilot actually is, because most men misunderstand it. Autopilot is not laziness. The man on autopilot is often remarkably busy. He works long hours. He fulfills his obligations. He is by most conventional measures a productive person. Autopilot is not stupidity. Some of the most intelligent men I have encountered are among the most thoroughly on autopilot. Intelligence does not protect against it. In some cases, it makes it worse, because the intelligent man can construct very convincing rationalizations for why the automatic life he is living is actually the deliberate life he has chosen. Autopilot is the state in which the majority of a man's significant behaviors are being driven by established patterns, habits, defaults, conditioned responses, rather than by conscious, present, engaged choice. It is the difference between a man who drives to work and a man who, halfway through the commute, realizes he cannot remember the last 5 miles. Both covered the same ground. Only one was present for it. The neuroscience behind this is straightforward. The brain is an efficiency machine. It converts repeated behaviors into automatic routines, sequences of action that can be executed with minimal conscious involvement, in order to free up cognitive resources for things that genuinely require attention. This is not a design flaw. It is an extraordinarily useful feature of human cognition. The problem is not the mechanism. The problem is what gets automated. When the behaviors that get automated are the ones that determine the direction of your life, the ways you spend your time, the quality of attention you bring to your work, the choices you make about what to pursue and what to leave behind, the efficiency mechanism becomes a life direction mechanism, and your life begins to be directed by your past choices rather than your present judgment. The man on autopilot is not choosing his life in the present. He is executing the accumulated choices of his past, many of which he made without full awareness, many of which no longer reflect who he is or what he wants, and many of which were never really his choices at all, but simply the defaults of the environment he happened to grow up in. Consider what the typical day on autopilot actually looks like when you examine it with honest attention. The morning begins not with a deliberate intention, but with a reaction. The alarm fires. The hand reaches for the phone, not because you decided to check your phone first thing, but because that is what the hand does. It has done it hundreds of times. The movement is automatic. In those first minutes of the day, before your conscious mind has fully engaged, you have already handed the direction of your attention to whatever the phone presents to you. Other people's emergencies, other people's opinions, other people's highlights, the algorithm's best guess at what will keep your eyes on the screen. You have given away the first minutes of your day, the minutes when the mind is freshest and most receptive, before you have made a single deliberate choice. The morning continues on autopilot. The routine that was never designed but simply accumulated. The breakfast that is eaten while doing something else. The commute that passes in a blur of podcast or music or anxious anticipation of the day ahead. At work, the autopilot continues. The inbox is checked because the inbox is always checked. The meetings are attended because the meetings are always attended. The tasks are completed in the order they present themselves, or in the order that has become habitual, rather than in the order that would produce the most meaningful results. The day ends. The evening unfolds along familiar tracks. The recovery that is not quite restful, because it involves the same screens that produce the fatigue. The plans that are made for tomorrow, or next week, or next month. Plans that will also be overtaken by the autopilot when the time comes. And at no point in this day, or in the hundreds of days like it that have preceded it, has the man asked himself the most important question available to a human being with a finite amount of time. Is this how I would choose to spend this day if I were choosing? The cost of autopilot is not dramatic. That is what makes it so dangerous. The man who loses everything in a single catastrophe knows something has gone wrong. The loss is visible. The damage is undeniable. He is forced by circumstances into the kind of honest reckoning that produces change. The man on autopilot loses nothing dramatically. He loses it slowly, in increments so small that they are individually invisible. A morning of potential that became a morning of reaction. A conversation that could have been genuine but settled for surface. An hour that was available for building something that got consumed by whatever happened to be present and stimulating and easy. Individually, each of these losses is trivial. Collectively, over months and years, they constitute the difference between a life that was built and a life that was endured. The compound interest of autopilot runs in the wrong direction. Every day spent primarily on autopilot is a day in which the pattern of automatic behavior becomes more deeply entrenched, more automatic, more resistant to the kind of deliberate override that genuine change requires. The autopilot becomes stronger the longer it runs unchallenged. And the man who has been on autopilot for 5 years is further from genuine choice than the man who has been on autopilot for 1 year. Not because he is weaker, because the grooves are deeper. This is why the time to address autopilot is always now, not later, when you are more ready. Not after the current season of busyness has passed. Now. Because now is when the cost of waiting is lowest and the grooves are shallowest. There is a specific quality that autopilot destroys more thoroughly than any other. More thoroughly than energy. More thoroughly than time. More thoroughly than opportunity. It destroys presence. Presence is the quality of being genuinely, fully, attentively here. In this moment, in this conversation, in this work, in this experience. Not half here while the other half is somewhere else. Not physically present while mentally elsewhere. Here, the man on autopilot is almost never fully here. He is somewhere between the present moment and the automatic continuation of whatever script has been running. He is half in the meeting and half composing his response before the other person has finished speaking. He is half with his family and half processing whatever accumulated during the day. He is half doing his most important work and half distracted by the pull of the easier, more immediately rewarding, more automatically available alternatives. This fractured presence has costs that are difficult to calculate precisely but impossible to miss once you start looking for them. The work produced without full presence is never as good as the work produced with it. Not just incrementally worse, categorically different. The quality of thinking available to a man who is fully here and fully engaged with a problem is qualitatively superior to the quality of thinking available to a man who is going through the motions of working while his attention is divided. The relationships built without full presence are thinner than the ones built with it. The people in your life can feel the difference between having your full attention and having a fraction of it. They may not articulate it, but they feel it. And the quality of connection, the depth of the relationship, the degree of genuine trust and understanding reflects the quality of presence over time. The life experienced without full presence is diminished, not ruined, not destroyed, but experienced at a fraction of its available richness. The moments that could have been fully inhabited are only half inhabited. The experiences that could have been genuinely felt are only partially felt, and the accumulation of only partially felt experiences is a life that feels, in retrospect, like it passed too quickly and with too little of what it could have contained. The question is how to switch the autopilot off, or more precisely, how to reduce the proportion of your life that runs automatically so that the proportion that runs deliberately is large enough to actually determine the direction of your life. This is not a question of trying harder. Effort directed at the wrong level of the problem produces no results. The man who white-knuckles his way through the morning routine, forcing himself by sheer will to behave differently, is fighting the autopilot at its own level. And the autopilot, which has been built over years of repetition, will win that fight most of the time. The answer is not willpower. The answer is design. You cannot fight the automatic with the voluntary. You can only replace one automatic with another. This is the insight that changes everything about how you approach the problem of autopilot. The goal is not to be consciously present for every moment of every day. That is neither possible nor desirable. The efficiency of automation is genuinely useful, and depleting your conscious attention on trivial automatic tasks would leave nothing for what actually matters. The goal is to design which behaviors become automatic, to deliberately install the routines, habits, and defaults that you want running automatically so that the direction they move you in is the direction you have consciously chosen. This is a completely different project from the exhausting, usually unsuccessful attempt to be more conscious about everything. It is the project of taking control of your defaults by deliberately choosing what they are. The morning is the most important terrain to reclaim, not because what happens in the morning is inherently more significant than what happens in the rest of the day, but because the morning sets the neurological and psychological context for everything that follows. The mind that has spent its first conscious minutes in reactive mode, responding to the phone, to the news, to other people's demands and content and emergencies, carries that reactive orientation into the rest of the day. The mind that has spent its first conscious minutes in deliberate mode, choosing its focus, engaging its own thoughts, orienting itself toward its own purposes, carries that orientation forward instead. The difference in the quality of the day that follows is significant, not guaranteed. The day will bring what the day brings, and not all of it can be controlled. But the orientation from which the day is met determines how much of what cannot be controlled will derail the underlying direction. Reclaiming the morning means one thing specifically. It means that the first action of the day is not determined by the phone or the news or the inbox. It is determined by you. What that first action is depends on what you are building. For some men it is reading. For others it is writing. For others it is physical movement. For others it is a practice of quiet reflection. The specific activity matters less than the principle that the first conscious choice of the day is a deliberate act organized around your own purposes, rather than a reaction to whatever external stimulus is most immediately available. This single change, first thing being yours, has a compounding effect over time that is difficult to overstate, because every morning that begins with a deliberate act reinforces the neurological pattern of deliberate action. And every morning that begins with a reactive act reinforces the pattern of reaction. Over weeks and months, the accumulated weight of these morning patterns shapes the default orientation of the mind. The man who has spent 6 months beginning his mornings deliberately is a different thinker from the man he was before that practice. Not because he is smarter, because the default mode of his attention has been recalibrated toward deliberate engagement rather than reactive response. The second terrain that autopilot typically dominates is work. Not the tasks themselves, the relationship to the tasks, the manner in which the work is approached. The man on work autopilot does his job. He completes his tasks. He meets his obligations. But he does it in a mode of going through the motions, minimum viable engagement, rather than in a mode of full, present, genuinely invested attention. This distinction matters for 2 reasons. The first is quality. The work produced in a mode of genuine engagement is better than the work produced in a mode of going through the motions. This seems obvious when stated plainly, but its implications are not often followed to their conclusion. If you are spending your working hours in autopilot mode, you are producing work that is a fraction of what you are capable of. And work that is a fraction of what you are capable of produces results that are a fraction of what your actual capability would generate. The second reason is development. The man who brings full engagement to his work develops through it. He notices things. He generates insights. He builds capabilities that the man going through the motions never builds, because those capabilities only emerge from the quality of attention that full engagement provides. The practical question is how to bring genuine engagement to work that has become routine. The mechanism that works most reliably is what I call the deliberate start. Before beginning any significant block of work, take 60 seconds to ask yourself a single question. What is the most important thing I could accomplish in the next hour that would move me meaningfully toward what I am building? Not what is on the to-do list, not what the inbox is demanding. What is the most important thing? The answer to this question reorients the work from reactive to deliberate, from executing the accumulated demands of others to pursuing your own most significant priority. This practice does not eliminate the need to respond to others' demands. It ensures that your best hours, your most capable, most creative, most fully present hours, go toward what matters most, rather than toward whatever happened to present itself first. The third terrain autopilot claims is the evening. The evening is the autopilot's most comfortable territory, because the evening is when the man is most depleted, and therefore most susceptible to the pull of whatever is easiest. The screens are easiest. The passive consumption is easiest. The low-grade stimulation that fills the hours without demanding anything from the mind is easiest. And so the evening, which could be the most valuable territory for building something, for developing a capability, for working on the thing that will eventually change the direction of the life, becomes instead the territory of recovery through consumption. Recovery is legitimate. Rest is necessary. I am not suggesting that every hour of the evening be spent in disciplined pursuit of ambitious goals. The body and mind require recovery, and there is nothing admirable about denying them it. What I am suggesting is that the recovery that happens on autopilot, the passive, screen-based, algorithmically curated consumption that most evenings default to, is not actually restful. It is stimulating. It keeps the mind in a low-grade state of alertness and processing that prevents the genuine rest that would actually make the next day better. The evening reclaimed from autopilot does not have to be productive in the conventional sense. It can be genuinely restful: conversation, reading, physical movement, time in nature, anything that allows the mind to genuinely settle rather than to continue processing in a stimulated but low-quality mode. And the reclaimed evening also has room, even an hour, consistently applied ahead over months, for the kind of deliberate building that autopilot never permits. 1 hour an evening, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, is 250 hours. 250 hours of deliberate building is enough to change the direction of a life if those hours are organized around a clear purpose and applied consistently. Most men have those hours. They are simply being consumed by the autopilot. I want to close with the most important thing I can say about autopilot, which is also the most uncomfortable. The autopilot is not doing something to you. You are doing it to yourself. Not consciously, not maliciously, not even negligently, in the usual sense of that word, but through the accumulated weight of small choices, to take the easier option, to follow the path already there, to avoid the discomfort of genuine engagement and genuine choice. You have built the autopilot that is now running your life. Which means, and this is the part that is both most uncomfortable and most hopeful, that you can unbuild it, not all at once, not through a single dramatic decision that instantly reconfigures your defaults, through the same mechanism by which it was built, repeated, small, consistent choices in a different direction. Each morning that you reclaim from the phone, you weaken the phone's claim on your mornings. Each block of work that you begin with a deliberate question rather than a reactive scroll through the inbox, you strengthen the pattern of deliberate engagement. Each evening that you choose genuine rest or genuine building over passive consumption, you reduce autopilot's grip on that territory. These are small changes. They feel small. In the beginning, they produce results that are invisible. And then, over weeks and months of consistent application, they produce results that are unmistakable. A mind that is more present, work that is more capable, a life that is increasingly actually yours. The autopilot has been running long enough. Take the controls. Not tomorrow, not when the current season settles down. Now. The life you are capable of building will not build itself while the autopilot runs. Take the controls. Make the first choice deliberately, and make the next one the same way. This is how it starts. This is how it always starts. One deliberate choice, made now, by a man who has decided that his life is worth being present for. Make that choice.